Welcome to the 17th episode of Ravenna Review, a program of stories, features, and book reviews. My name is Robert Boucheron. I will be your host for a half hour of reading aloud with illustrations. The print magazine, Ravenna Review, is published 4 times a year in Charlottesville, Virginia, on the Ravenna River. The magazine is available in bookstores on the Main Street Mall in Charlottesville and other bookstores in Virginia. You can order a copy or a subscription from the website ravennareview.com. Contributors live all over the world and they write about places far and wide, book reviews or small press titles, and authors you may not know about. In this episode, we will visit the resort of Huatulco, Mexico, and a talkative black bird, Schenectady, New York, through 360 years of history, Washington, D.C., and the life of J. Edgar Hoover, a fast-moving object in outer space, and old pictures of circus performers. In the news from Habsburg, young Donnie Clatterbuck hates team sports, learns to juggle, and runs away to the circus. Story: The 7 Songs by Mitchell Toes. Our first morning in Huatulco, a resort on the south coast of Mexico, sunny but less famous than Acapulco to the west, I got up with the dawn. I sat on a stone bench, the surface still cool from the night air, and peeled the store labels off my new board shorts. They were in fashion in 2005, available on a discount after Christmas. This was my second visit to Mexico. The first was when I was young, the summer before I got married. The church paid my way, and I helped with construction work in a village near Puerto Vallarta. Since then, the farthest south my wife and I had traveled from Manitoba was Wisconsin Dells, until we won this week-long trip in a raffle from our local Chamber of Commerce. It was the only way we could afford a resort like this. The local birds did not know my travel history and were happy to keep me company. They chittered and squawked, welcoming me despite my barefoot intrusion. An emissary grackle, curious, angry, or mocking, maybe all 3, landed close by. The bird was there for a reason, it seemed. Fixing me with an unblinking white sequin of an eye, the black bird gave me the full range of its vocal repertoire: piercing passerine whistles, abrupt diphthongal clicks, feather-puffing squeaky door creaks, and various complicated combo arrangements. I'd heard of the bird's bravado, and here was persuasive evidence that all I'd heard was true. We had similar species of birds back home, red-winged blackbirds, so common that when I pictured our house, the reedy lake shore, the sign marking the 50th parallel down by the road, I pictured these birds too. In my mind, I saw a male blackbird, red chevrons flashing as it flitted from cattail to cattail. It sang, then flew, then sang again. Our red-tailed blackbirds were itinerant, chased south by the ice and frost each year. This winter we had followed them, flown as they did to Mexico. My wife and I were snowbirds too, at least for 1 week. The brash lout atop the palapa before me that morning was a cousin to them, a great-tailed grackle or sanate, the loquacious king of the beach. He was a big male, aggressive and territorial. Like a drunken bully, he assumed a prominent location and proclaimed himself, vaunting the splendid length of his tail, the magnificence of his harem, and the iridescence of his henna-black plumage. I whistled and clucked back at him, causing laughter and lingua española commentary from nearby pool attendants and landscapers already at work on the resort grounds. One of these fellows wandered over shyly and pointed at the loud bird. "Be careful what you teach him," he said in lightly accented English, far better than my limited Spanish. "These creatures are fast learners." "I probably speak more sanate than Spanish," I said. "I taught a sanate many words when I was a child," the man continued, watering the lawn. I imagined him as a small boy living in a jungle casita, running barefoot like a Latin Mowgli and followed by a tame sanate. "We lived in a high-rise next to a large park in Mexico City," he said. "I'm a retired university librarian." I was further surprised. My emerging idea of his childhood seemed condescending and stereotypical from the start. I felt ashamed by how I had assumed things about this stranger. I made up my mind to be more thoughtful in my appraisal, as I'm sure this stranger would be in assessing me. He saw my almost hidden double take, and it was like he expected it, as if he had seen this reaction before. My grandchildren get a special pass to use the swimming pool here, he said, and I'm able to swim in the ocean near the resort. He squinted across the sea at the rising sun, and I squinted with him. It's better than working at Walmart, he concluded with a friendly half-smile. I held out my hand. Matt. Senor Mateo, he said, taking my hand with a broadening smile. I am Juan. Juan, the talkative Zanate, and I continued our pre-breakfast conversations daily. I learned a lot about my new friends, feathered and otherwise. Juan had interesting theories, and he was eager to share them. For one thing, he thought the Zanate in each region developed a distinct vocabulary. Vernacular, he said, enunciating carefully as if the word was fragile. Like the American Southerners or those loud ones from Boston. Feature, Schenectady by Helmuth Onderdonk. In 1661, headed by Arend van Curler, a group of Dutch farmers bought land northwest of Albany, New York, then called Fort Orange, from the Mohawks. On the south bank of the Mohawk River, the Dutch built a square village of 4 blocks surrounded by a palisade. Schenectady transcribes an indigenous name that may mean beyond the pines. The place had a strategic cachet. It was a natural crossing point for land travel. A ferry was established. In 1808, Theodore Burr designed and built a wooden bridge on stone piers at 900 feet. It was the longest such bridge in the world at the time. Over 3 centuries, the square village became the Stockade, an enclave of 18th and 19th century houses. It had a commercial waterfront on the channel of the Mohawk River called the Binnakill. The Stockade became New York State's first designated historic district in 1962. Restored with cobblestone streets, it hosts walking tours and an annual outdoor art show. The French and Indians burned the town in 1690 and attacked again in 1748. During the Revolutionary War, the Battle of Saratoga, an important victory for the Americans, was fought not far to the north in 1777. General George Washington visited at least 3 times, including a sleepover in 1782. After the Revolutionary War, inhabitants overcame the power of the Dutch landowners and achieved representative government. Schenectady acquired a city charter in 1798. Around this time, the Schenectady Academy was started, to be refounded as Union College in 1795. The college moved in 1814 to a campus planned by the French landscape architect Joseph-Jacques Ramée, a model for American colleges, including the University of Virginia, founded in 1819. Union College has the first comprehensively planned campus in the United States. The campus now has 100 acres, student enrollment is 2,200, and the academic program is liberal arts. Union College's centerpiece is Knott Memorial Hall, named for the president Eliphalet Knott, designed by Edward Tuckerman Potter, built of stone, and completed in 1879 in an elaborate Victorian Gothic style. The building has 16 sides and a polychrome dome raised on a clear-story drum. Paved with colorful and caustic tile, the interior is ringed by cast-iron balconies. Former the campus library, the Knott Memorial was restored for public lectures, concerts, and exhibitions. The building appears as a backdrop in the 1973 film The Way We Were, starring Barbra Streisand and Robert Redford. The Erie Canal, completed in 1825, connected Lake Erie in the west along the Mohawk River Valley to the Hudson River, making a navigable route from the Midwest to New York, which quickly outgrew all other seaports on the East Coast. In the 1830s, railroads were built on the same route, among the earliest in the United States. Industry sprang up in a string of upstate cities: Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Utica, Schenectady, and Troy. Iron manufacturing was an early pursuit. Schenectady and Troy made cast iron stoves, and during the Civil War, artillery. Railroad industries thrived in Schenectady in the late 19th century. They consolidated in 1901 as the American Locomotive Company. In 1887, Thomas Edison, based in New Jersey, moved his Edison Machine Works to Schenectady. In 1892, Edison made Schenectady the headquarters for his General Electric Company. Alco and GE, to use their later acronyms, developed huge industrial plants. Each was a complex of buildings and streets surrounded by a fence within gates, a city within the city. Other manufacturing included carriages, brooms, and a patent medicine called Dr. Carter's Pink Pills for Pale People. But Schenectady styled itself the Electric City and the city that lights and halls the world. In the 1960s, the downtown district was dreary, centered on a 7-block stretch of State Street, but it still had most of its buildings. They included banks, the New York Central Railroad Station in the Beaux-Arts style, and the Dewar-Schenectady County office building at the top of the hill. The Carl Company was a multi-floor department store. Hermes Music Store sold sheet music, instruments, and musical supplies. Proctor's Theater, built in 1926 as a movie palace and vaudeville theater with an interior arcade, was a cultural landmark. The behemoth Hotel Van Curler, Georgian revival in style and built of red brick in 1925, went bankrupt in 1968. It was renovated as Schenectady County Community College, part of the State University of New York system. About 2000, the state government in Albany realized it could develop office space in Schenectady. A revival ensued. Book review, G-Man, J. Edgar Hoover and the Making of the American Century by Beverly Gage. This is the only biography of J. Edgar Hoover you will ever need. In the vogue for bulk, the book is large and dense, small print, 100 pages of notes and indices. It cannot be comfortably held in the hands or the lap to read, but must be laid flat on a sturdy table. Maybe it was intended all along as a reference book for libraries. Beverly Gage thoroughly covers her subject, a high-level bureaucrat, political infighter, embodiment of law and order, and pop culture icon. Yet the subtitle promises more than it delivers. This is not a history of the American century in the sense of international power and economic dominance, though it does mention the explosive growth of the federal government from the 1940s onward. Loaded with incidents, anecdotes, quotes, documents, and black and white photographs, it is an objective portrait of a man who was more interesting than the public image he projected. The style is dry and careful. Gage is a history professor at Yale University, but the man was full of outrageous contradictions. Lytton Strachey would have had a field day. Hoover was born in Washington, D.C. in 1895, and he died there in 1972. He earned a law degree, but his sole employment was in the federal government. G-Man is the perfect title. In a long career of almost 50 years, Hoover went from idealistic young reformer to bulldog-like conservative, deeply corrupted by power, and all the while he was a homosexual in plain sight. His spouse, as Gage says, was an FBI agent named Clyde Tolson. Tolson became Hoover's second-in-command in 1930. He traveled and socialized with the boss, nightclubs, vacations, formal occasions, and remained at his side to the end. This fact is so much at odds with Hoover's reputation, Gage goes into considerable detail to show how the relationship started and how it developed. Everyone in the press and official Washington knew about it, but no one attacked Hoover. Does this show how feared he was? Or does it show a more realistic attitude among people in power than their political rhetoric will admit? Gage does not ask such questions. What she does, admirably, is to put Hoover in context. From the 1930s, when he and the FBI cracked down on organized crime, to the 1950s, when he promoted conservative social values like Christianity, white supremacy, and patriotism, Hoover was immensely popular among Americans. Conditioned by the protests of the 1960s and later, when the FBI was more into domestic spying than law enforcement, we are apt to forget this. Promoted by newspapers and Hollywood, Hoover's tough guy image was unique for the head of a federal agency, a political appointee who served presidents of both parties. His popularity probably accounts for his long tenure. Ruthless skill at infighting helped, but blackmail and intimidation were not what kept Hoover in office. Hoover's roots as a Southern white boy had lasting effects. He grew up in a segregated city, and Kappa Alpha, his college fraternity, remained important to him socially and emotionally. For many years, the FBI recruited agents from Kappa Alpha. Gage sees in this racist past a reason for Hoover's persecution of Martin Luther King Jr. and other black civil rights activists. At the same time, conservative Southern whites hated Hoover for the FBI's interference in their states. The early 1960s were the era of President John Kennedy and his brother as Attorney General, and Hoover had difficulty adapting to both men as his bosses. Book review, Extraterrestrial by Avi Loeb. Avi Loeb is not a crackpot. He is the chairman of the astronomy department at Harvard University, as he often reminds the reader. Like Harvard professors William James, George Santayana, Stephen Jay Gould, Edward O. Wilson, and Gilles Lepore, to name only a few, Loeb is also a popular writer. Extraterrestrial is about a scientific discovery, a meticulous theory of what it means, and a plea for scientists and public alike to keep an open mind. This last point may be the most important. An insider in the world of academic research, with many publications to his credit, Loeb complains about conformity in scientific thinking, which ought to be governed by logic, evidence, and verification of results. His peers are hostile to ideas that lack consensus, and young scientists, including his own postdoctoral assistants, are reluctant to rock the boat. They need jobs and funding for research, so what is all the fuss about? In September and October 2017, an object from outside the solar system made a rapid approach, swung close to the sun, and sped off even more rapidly. The Panoramic Survey Telescope and Rapid Response System, or PAN-STARRS, a network of telescopes and high-definition cameras located in an observatory atop Haleakala, the dormant volcano that forms most of the island of Maui, took photos. Only when the object was gone did people notice. It was small, but it had no tail, which means it was not a chunk of dirty ice, like an asteroid or a comet. It oscillated in brightness on an 8-hour cycle, which means it was elongated or flat, and rotating as it moved. The list of anomalies goes on. The object was given the name Oumuamua, which means scout in Hawaiian. Loeb, among others, studied the photos. This is his interpretation, with much of his life story thrown in, along with speculation about the early universe, the conflict of religion and science, NASA rockets, life on Mars and other planets, black holes, the project called SETI, or Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and more. Maybe the book is several articles stitched together. If so, that would account for repetitions and meandering. Loeb grew up on a farm in Israel, has 2 daughters, and his friends include Freeman Dyson and the late Stephen Hawking. Even at his most arcane or chatty, he holds the reader's attention. In a chapter titled The Light Sail Hypothesis, Loeb applies an earlier thought experiment or unfunded project of his own to Oumuamua. Most astronomers believe the object was natural, though unique, but Loeb makes the case for an artificial origin. Maybe it was a probe or explorer like the 5 NASA has sent so far, and maybe it was long past its useful life, like the space junk that already circles the Earth. A light sail is a thin membrane that collects light from a star enough to propel it onward, as Oumuamua apparently did. We humans already have the technology to build one, Loeb says, but it would be very expensive. The chapter, Learning from Children, mentions discoveries that met stiff resistance from the scientific community and the ongoing ridicule of SETI. At the same time, academic fads like supersymmetry, the multiverse, and string theory have no evidence to support them. Here is a sample. A scientific culture that has not learned this lesson, that does not require external verification in observable, confirmable data, and that advocates for ideas deemed inherently correct due to their mathematical beauty, strikes me as a culture at risk of losing its grounding. Physics is not a recreational activity. News from Hapsburg, the juggler. The summer he turned 15, Donnie Clatterbuck took up juggling. The how-to book said it was a low-stress exercise you can do anywhere, a way to improve muscular coordination and a skill that would come in handy in any social situation. The book was illustrated with drawings of a faceless human figure surrounded by little numbers and arrows like a cloud of midges. Daily practice was the key. Donnie was determined. By the last year of high school, he could keep 4 tennis balls in the air, sometimes 5. He could also spin a plate on a stick, twirl small hoops, and balance a chair on his forehead, though not all at once. His grades were passing but mediocre. Teachers and administrators agreed that Donnie was not college material. His mother, Janine, who knew nothing about academic life, was unable to contradict them. The future looked vague. Nor was Donnie trailer trash. Annabelle was, but she fixed that. After a stormy argument with her mother, she left town with an older man who claimed to be a photographer. Annabelle was destined for a career as a fashion model and actress. A pair of boobs, Janine said. Whether she meant the couple or Annabelle's main attraction was open to discussion. Juggling practice kept Donnie out of trouble, but it was a solitary pursuit. He had no friends and no enemies, thanks to his athletic build. Bullies looked for easy prey, sissies and shrimps. Despite the promise of how to juggle practically anything, nobody in the high school or the mobile home park cared much for juggling. They watched Donnie for a while, then grew bored with the repetition. A routine that would last several minutes and keep a crowd enthralled had yet to emerge. Practice was its own reward, like playing a musical instrument or running a mile every day. Skill was a secret kind of pleasure. Donnie graduated in May and got a job installing asphalt shingle roofs. Construction paid well, and Donnie liked being high above the ground. He had no fear of falling, but the roofing contractor sent men out in teams, and Donnie's foreman harped on teamwork. Another talking point was the efficient use of material and labor. Donnie's co-workers wasted both. The game was to see how much they could get away with. With Annabelle gone, the mobile home was more spacious. Janine Clatterbuck said Donnie could stay so long as he was clean and quiet, which he was. He was gainfully employed. He paid for his own food, contributed to rent and utilities, and saved the rest of his wages toward a used vehicle. Begging for rides and waiting for them to show got old quickly. Donnie wanted a pickup truck like you see on television, fording a stream or chugging up a dirt road with massive treads. Instead, he bought a compact car with good fuel mileage. The tires were almost new. Mr. Yates had taught him how to drive. Incidentally, he gave practical advice on what to look for in a car and how to handle a traffic cop. At the end of August, a traveling circus came to the Quinnipiac County Fair. A splashy color poster showed an old-fashioned troupe of acrobats, clowns, and sword swallowers. One girl stood on the back of a pony that raced around a ring, while another girl hung upside down from a rope, her arms spread like wings. A master of ceremonies in the dress uniform of a European field marshal flourished a whip. The troupe was called the Magnificent Magyars, on tour by special arrangement. Donnie took a shower after work. The sky was still bright, but the heat of the day had passed. It was Friday, payday, and good to be alive. In his sensible car, Donnie drove to the fairground. 2 young women who looked like the girls on the poster juggled. One was the star, and the other was her assistant. They played music on a boom box, up-tempo and loud, and they wore a costume of tights and a flimsy skirt. While one performed, the other gestured like a ballet dancer, as if to say, "Behold!" Their routine was not much better than his, a few minutes of balls and hoops, When the bowling pins dropped to the ground, nobody booed. The audience laughed like it was a good joke. Donnie wanted to talk to the jugglers. What would he say? The set was over and the crowd dispersed. He strolled in, picked up 4 balls, and started to juggle. The young woman watched, and the assistant ignored him. Donnie finished with a behind-the-back flourish and bowed. There was no applause. "Where did you learn?" the young woman said. Up close, she looked tough, no nonsense. Browned by the sun, she had black hair. "At home, I taught myself." "Not bad," she said coolly. She was Donnie's height, though when she was performing, he thought she was taller. "Thanks!" Donnie was elated. "Not good either." "What do you mean?" "It's not enough to have the moves," she said. "You need to wow the audience, create a little suspense, make them gasp in awe, or laugh, like today." "Can you teach me?" The assistant snorted with impatience. She wanted to pack up. The young woman talking to Donnie was in no hurry. "Who are you?" "Donnie Clatterbuck." "Mara. That's my sister, Juliska." Juliska grabbed the balls from Donnie's hands. "You live here?" Mara asked. "Yes." "You have a job, a car?" Right then and there, Donnie wanted to tell Mara the story of his life. The way she screwed up her eyes made him stop.